Coming up on FX, news that's not just up close, but personal. Under Scrutiny with Jane Wallace, followed by Home and Away.
The Cold War is over, the threat of worldwide nuclear oblivion has faded, and American arms sales around the world have never been higher. Are we making the world safe for democracy, or just making a buck? Welcome to Under Scrutiny. Good evening, I'm Jane Wallace. As Cubans continue to flee their country by the thousands, the United States today announced plans to turn the Guantanamo naval base into a detention camp that will hold 40,000 refugees. Its capacity is now 23,000, and there are already 14,000 Haitians there. Since President Clinton halted automatic asylum for Cubans Friday, 9,000 have been picked up at sea. Today's count was nearly 1,200 by 2 p.m. Under Scrutiny tonight looks at one area of foreign trade where the United States is doing just fine. In fact, you might say it's going great guns. The Berlin Wall falls. The Cold War ends. Time to turn swords into plowshares, right? Wrong. Just time to sell more swords, it turns out. In 1990, right after the fall of the wall, the United States sold $14 billion worth of weapons to the rest of the world. Last year, our peace dividend was the sale of more than $33 billion in weapons overseas. 73% of all new arms deals to the third world had U.S. stamped on them. That's 4 times what it was 5 years earlier. There are 18 full-scale ethnic wars raging, and 38 lesser conflicts. Plenty of clients. Saudi Arabia, $12.5 billion. Senegal, a mere $7 million. All this helps American employment, right? Wrong. For some reason, defense jobs are falling by at least 11,000 a month. And of course, sales can backfire. Somalia, a case in point. Americans killed by U.S. weapons supplied in friendlier times. And some believe there will be other situations like that for an America that talks peace and sells war. 2 years ago, candidate Bill Clinton promised to press for strong international limits on what he called the dangerous and wasteful flow of weapons to troubled regions. And President Clinton promised to issue a policy paper on arms sales. So far, no real policy, no real paper. Our question tonight is, in these troubled times, should the United States be the arms merchant to the world? Joining us from Washington, our former ambassador, Max Kampelman, arms control negotiator in the Carter administration. He will be joining us as soon as we get that satellite link. And Joel L. Johnson, vice president of the Aerospace Industries Association. Dallas Jackson also joins us of the Project on Demilitarization and Democracy. Dallas Jackson, you really do feel that this is a cynical policy on a number of fronts. Can you put it in simple terms for me?
Yeah, Jane. The problem with the Clinton administration is that it sold twice as many arms as the Bush administration. No real U.S. jobs are created by arms exports. We only go in to endanger our own soldiers. We endanger American citizens, we endanger international and national security by increasing arms exports.
Okay, but if I look at it as an outsider, I see $31 billion worth of sales. How come that isn't making American jobs?
There's a lot of offsets in arms exports. For example, for a lot of countries, they can't afford to purchase U.S. arms. So what the U.S. does is create situations in which we can buy more imports from other countries and in turn make them money, increase their economic status, and they use that money to purchase arms from the U.S.
So we're paying for our own arms or trading out for goods in kind that the other country can trade back.
Exactly. For one every 100 jobs created through arms exports, 50 are lost in domestic exports because of the jobs that we had to create to export the arms.
So you're saying that this doesn't really create any American jobs, doesn't really create extra American monies to any significant amount that wouldn't already be there, And it creates a more dangerous world.
Oh, definitely creates a more dangerous world. The people who do actually make money off these arms are the arms exporters themselves, or excuse me, the people who actually create the arms. But the country itself, no, does not have a real sufficient gain in importing so many arms across the world.
Now, Joel Johnson, you represent the arms industry. You are, in fact, a lobbyist, if I have it correct.
We represent the aerospace industry on both commercial and defense issues. Yes.
Okay, would that be weapons as well?
Yes.
All right. We're not talking about rifles and bullets here. We're not talking about basics, are we? We're up to fighter aircraft and beyond, are we not?
The major sales that you're talking about, the major dollar volume, are large weapons platforms such as fighter aircraft. Absolutely. And using the data that you just mentioned, yes, last year you had a very large sale of $32 billion. 50% of that were two sales, 72 fighter aircraft to Saudi Arabia, which of course were paid with, or will be paid with cash, and there were no offsets on that sale. The other major sale was a $6 billion sale of fighter aircraft to Taiwan, following Chinese purchase of top-of-the-line Russian fighter aircraft. Again, there were no offsets associated with that sale. And again, the sale will be in cash to the United States.
If you step back from the industry part of it, which I know is your line of work, as a citizen, do you think this is a wise thing to do, to be arming all these places?
Well, in the first place, I think if you look back at the 60 years of history of defense sales for the United States, you'll find an extraordinarily good record. I think you'd be hard-pressed to find any example of any significant U.S. weapons, either A, used in ways they weren't intended for, or B, used against U.S. soldiers.
Oh, come on. It doesn't. My memory serves me. My short memory serves me with Iraq and Iran. I don't think that's too tough. Joel?
There was not a single U.S. weapon in Iraq, period. Not one.
I'd like
Go ahead, Dallas.
Can I jump in there? That's totally ridiculous for him to say that it has no significance to us as U.S. citizens. I know Joel's familiar with this term. It's called the boomerang effect. And since what this means is that, you know, the recent conflicts and wars that we've been involved in, most of those weapons, especially in the 90s, that these other countries have used were arms that we exported to them.
Okay, let's let him finish. Joel, go ahead. I want you in a general sense to respond to Dallas's points that he made earlier.
Name one country and one weapon system that's true in the last 50 years.
You want weapons
Somalia.
or arms? Somalia, Iraq, Panama.
There were no weapons. There were no U.S. weapons in Iraq. The Congressional Research Service will tell you that. Max Kampelman, if he gets on, will tell you that. Anyone who knows anything about Iraq will tell you there was a complete arms boycott on Iraq for 20 years.
Okay. Well, there was a complete arms boycott, but the notion of the secret arms sales to Iraq and the relationship with the Bush administration is still a matter of investigation. Let's skip off this point for a moment, if you will. I'd like to get your larger position on the issues that Dallas already brought up, which is that we're making the world a more dangerous place and we're not really creating any American jobs by it in the net in the long haul.
In the first place, in terms of whether the world is safer or more dangerous, we provide weapons only to friendly countries. The United States government, the United States people rather like the idea that countries help share in the burden of defending themselves as opposed to depending solely on U.S. soldiers' lives to defend them for
Okay,
themselves.
but how are you defining friendly countries?
I am talking about Taiwan. I am talking about Saudi Arabia. I'm talking about Israel. I'm talking about Turkey. I'm talking about South Korea, Singapore.
On the other hand,
75% of all of our sales.
On the other hand, one of the oldest tricks in the book, obviously, in the weapons industry is to sell to both sides and escalate both sides.
Exactly.
We sell to Turkey, we sell to Greece. You get them both whooped up, and then they both keep buying.
And then let me tell you,
sell to those two countries as members of the NATO alliance. Each of them had responsibilities under NATO. They have not used those weapons on each other. They certainly haven't used them on ourselves.
Well, if they haven't used them yet, isn't much. Hang on a second there, Dallas. Let me point out one other thing, Joel, before we go to a commercial break, which is that 90% of the countries we are selling weapons to do not have elected governments. So they may be friendly, but these are not friendly democracies in the sense that most Americans think a friendly country might be.
That's also a fallacious statement. We can come back to it after the commercial.
Okay, we'll pick up this discussion. Obviously, we have quite a bit more to say on all fronts in just a moment.
Welcome back to Breakfast Time, the morning show with all the information.
Need a little life in your morning?
Welcome back to Sound Effects, the show all about the best.
Looking for something live to keep you awake at night? Well, search no more, because FX is on when you are. We've got what you need day, night, and in between, with our live hosts, new shows, and popular favorites. And we'll always be there, whenever you need us most. FX, day and night.
My darling, I have procured a delicious meal. It's a shrimp and fish meal from Long John Silver's. 3 tasty battered dip shrimp and their famous fish.
The Little Rascals, now playing at theaters in a Long John Silver's near you.
To power clean whites, there's a new power tool that cleans, whitens, and brightens. Introducing Arrow with Bleach Alternative. Where some regular detergents can't cut it, new Arrow with Bleach Alternative nails it. It's the new power tool for stains.
Now Glade Carpet Potpourri is 5 times better than baking soda.
It's 5 times tougher.
Improved Glade Carpet Potpourri absorbs tough carpet odors 5 times better than baking soda.
It's 5 times fresher.
New Glade Carpet Potpourri in a new pet formula, too, for wet pet accidents.
It's 5 times better than baking soda.
Fresh from Glade. S.C. Johnson Wax.
FX is TV with you in mind. And Backchat is just one of the ways we do that.
Dear FX, I've been wanting to write you for a while now. I just gotta tell you, I love your programs. I have 2 questions. 1, on Mission Impossible, how many times does Jim Phelps' tape self-destruct? And 2, what's the best way a viewer can send in questions or comments about something they've seen on your network? Keep up the good work. Sincerely yours, Joni De Silva.
Well, Joni, the answer to your second question is Backchat. Every night at 12:30 a.m., FX concludes its programming day with a show that you, the viewer, writes. There are 3 ways to reach us. You can call us at 212-802-4102 or fax us at 212-802-4205, and we'll answer your questions on the air. Or you can write us just like you did at this address. Get in touch with Backchat and we'll tell the world what you think and what you want to know about FX. Like the fact that Jim's tape self-destructs 168 different times. One for each episode made of Mission Impossible. Backchat and you. A great late-night conversation every night, only on FX.
FX.
We're back. We're talking about booming American arms sales around the world at a time when we're talking peace and selling weaponry. Joel Johnson, I cut you off a bit right before the break there. You know, we both know that in the shifting alliances that make up foreign relations these days, that a friend is a friend until suddenly you're at war with them. Iraq was our friend until suddenly we were at war with Iraq. Now, you say no American weapons were involved there, but you understand in the larger scheme of things how that happens.
No, I really don't, Jane. Absolutely, we had a 20-year boycott on any U.S. weapon sales to Iraq. They were not our friends. There was an effort made at one period of time to sell civilian goods, commercial goods to Iraq as a way to try to bring them into the system. It didn't work. The policy was a failed policy, had nothing to do with weapons. There were no U.S. weapon systems in Iraq. Now, do you think the world would really have been better had the Saudis been less well-armed? Certainly the Iraqis did not attack Kuwait or Iraq or Saudi because they thought that there was an arms buildup in those 2 countries. They thought they could roll over them and the U.S. wouldn't do anything.
Given the volatility of all of those countries in the Middle East, though, how can you not just be churning? It's gasoline on the fire, is it not, to continue to supply these countries?
No, not if we've supplied all of them, of course, but we don't. Who do we supply in the Middle East? Israel and Egypt, who signed the Camp David Peace Accords.
Well, excuse me,
Saudi
but
Arabia.
when those pieces of paper hold up, we can all go home.
Joel,
Well, they've held up for 20 years.
We supply 73%. We supply 73% of the third world. There's a point that you made I want to go back to before the break. Joe made a reference to the American public being satisfied or being happy with the amount of weapons that we're exporting or the money. I'm not sure what his reference was, but there's a poll taken by the National Security News Service of about 1,003 or 1,006 to be specific Americans, and 96% of those Americans surveyed did not want us to be exporting weapons to countries with undemocratic governments, with countries with dictatorships. And it's quite simple that the general public is not aware that this is going on. I think if the general public was aware of how much money that we were making off selling weapons to countries that our uncles, our brothers, our relatives might actually go and fight in, I think it'd be an uproar, it'd be an outrage.
Given it hasn't happened in 60 years, that's probably a reasonable non-concern on the part of the American public. In point of fact, again, if you look at the principal purchasers of U.S. weapons in the third world over the last 4 to 5 years, they have been Kuwait and Saudi Arabia, with whom we just had 500,000 American troops helping defend those countries. Presumably, we think it's worth them helping to defend themselves.
Yes, but I thought you said earlier that if we supplied these countries, we wouldn't have to step in to defend.
Right. And Joe, who are we defending them against?
It is.
Well, gentlemen, I'm going to cut you both off for a moment because we have a guest who's now joining us electronically, who's heard these arguments for years and is a bit of an old hand at all of this stuff. Max Kampelman, what do you make of this? We are now being called in the Wall Street Journal, America, the pushiest arms peddler in the world. Is this a cynical policy, and is it amoral as far as you're concerned?
Jay, let me first apologize. I was ready, but the technology was obviously not ready.
Yes, sir, it's our fault.
I heard the discussion. There were a number of errors. Let me first start by saying that I was misidentified at the beginning of the program. Even though President Carter did appoint me to my first negotiating position, the arms negotiation was under the control of Ronald Reagan, so I served both presidents.
Well, we're wrong on two counts. Forgive us and keep going.
As far as the merits of the case are concerned, what I'm hearing is a tremendous amount of information that's misleading and also that's really oversimplified. The existence of arms does not create wars. Nations look to arms because they have tensions, they have fears, they have concerns, so they look to arms. If we can present to the world through some kind of an international agreement or understanding better ways to deal with their tensions and their fears, then we can reduce the arms. While countries and those who lead those countries are concerned about their security and concerned about their values, they are going to purchase arms. Now, the question is, should we sell them, or should we let the Czechs sell them, or somebody else?
It's one step further. Forgive me, Mr. Kampelman.
No, well, it's all right. It's your show.
It is that not only should we be selling these, should we be aggressively seeking this business as a nation when we are the last remaining first world superpower?
It seems to me that we should be. If a country wants to buy, there's no reason why we shouldn't be competing with the French and the Brazilians and not permit the Chinese and the North Koreans to be the only ones who supply. Now, I would much rather see a world which depends less on arms.
We'll get to you, Dallas. Hang on.
Okay.
Okay, but you have no problem with America being the main supplier to all of these third world outlets, as it were.
Well, it isn't just to the third world, but if we don't supply, they will buy it someplace else, or if they don't buy it someplace else, they'll begin manufacturing their own. So to repeat, I'd much rather we did not require the use of arms, but while the arms are there, I'm convinced the existence of arms also prevents wars and prevents conflicts.
Okay, let me ask you one other point since you're joining us in progress, which is this. How much money does this actually make for America? How many American jobs do these arms sales really represent? And I'm asking you to subtract the loan guarantees that America offers, the various weapons grants that it gives these countries in order for them to be able to buy our weapons. Obviously, the defense interests make money here. Are the American jobs being protected, or is that being thrown away in the process?
Well, there are obviously jobs being created if goods are being created. Those goods can be civilian goods, can be military goods. If they're created, if they produce, jobs get produced.
Okay, but what about these offset
programs? But that shouldn't be why we do it.
Well, I think that's why Americans would go along with it.
Well, but it's a useful plus.
Okay.
We do it because of the fact that we still live in a world in which arms play a vital role in national security.
All right, Dallas, I promise Dallas Jackson will get to you when we come back after another quick commercial break.
Some people get bent out of shape if they don't get Fresh TV.
I'm not gonna lie, I did kill someone.
Get help. Home and Away. Fresh TV every weeknight on FX.
My darling, I have procured a delicious meal. It's a shrimp and fish meal from Long John Silver's. 3 tasty battered dip shrimp and their famous fish.
The Little Rascals, now playing at theaters in a Long John Silver's near you.
When static stops you,
Get Bounce. Bounce lets you go.
Got static? Get Bounce. Bounce keeps clothes virtually static-free.
Get Bounce and get going.
Bounce stops static before static stops you.
The all-new Subaru Legacy has the traction to turn a winter storm into a day at the beach. And a day at the beach, well, Subaru all-wheel drive is the ultimate safety feature. It reacts instantly, transferring power automatically from the wheels that slip to the wheels that grip. So all you have to do is enjoy the drive. The all-season, all-fun, all-wheel drive Subaru Legacy. Subaru. The beauty of all-wheel drive.
Call this toll-free number now to receive a free vacation discount book where you'll save on hotels, dining, and attractions during Kissimmee St. Cloud's Great Fall Winter Getaway. Stay right in the heart of Central Florida's world-famous attractions. Walt Disney World's Magic Kingdom, Epcot Center, Disney MGM Studios, as well as SeaWorld, and Universal Studios Florida. Call 1-800-354-KISS today to receive a free coupon book and save on your Kissimmee St. Cloud Great Fall Winter Getaway.
Craving a road trip? FX is on the road every day. When you're on the road with FX, you never know where we'll take you.
We're going to head to Miami coming up later in the show.
What you'll see?
We are going to be in San Francisco tomorrow, and we are going to talk to a man who has the world's largest collection of tin toys.
Or what you'll hear.
And we're telling you about music not only from around the corner, from around the world.
Buckle up. We're road tripping. FX, on the road every day.
We're back. We're talking about America becoming the #1 exporter of arms to the third world. That would be weapons. And Dallas Jackson, I've sat on you for a whole segment. I think what they're trying to say, with all due respect, is that you're being naive in the sense that it's an armed world out there, and it'd be nice if everybody walked around with a daisy in their gun, but that isn't the way it works.
Right. And these guys have been in this business for years. That's their same excuse. And that's the same excuse they're going to keep using until we, something as a U.S. public, shut this institution down. Let me say something. The $16 billion Iran and Iraq invested in arms exports, if that would have taken that same money, invested it in peacekeeping institutions, invested in their country's economy, health care, anything but the arms, that whole war could have been avoided. And the question of if we don't sell arms, somebody else will, that only builds fear, that only builds other problems that we don't need within this country and countries that we sell arms to. And another thing is that what happens when we sell arms to Greece and other countries is that we have people that come back to this country, and it's quite simple. They say, look, these countries have such and such weapons. We over here in the U.S. need to manufacture those weapons and be, in a sense, equal with the other countries because they might out-arm us.
Keeping up with the Joneses.
Yes.
Joel Johnson, what does this do? The fact that these exports seem to sort of boost the defense industry that's already facing some military cuts at home, and clearly for many, many years has been the backbone, one of the mainstays of the American economy. Doesn't this buy you guys a lease on life in a sense, or at least time, as an industry, even though you're losing jobs, before you have to face real questions of peaceful conversion?
Not really. In the first place, actual exports of U.S. weapons have been pretty constant for the last 7 years, during a time at which procurement went down by about 50%. in terms of the domestic budget.
That's not my information at
in
all.
which
My
we have
information is
sold-
that it's increased fourfold in the last several years.
No, that's simply not true. You're confusing, and I know it's a technical term, and one has to be careful. There's a difference between what your new orders are and what you're actually shipping. What happens?
Let's not dick over the fine print here. The new orders are going to be delivered.
The fine print is, workers get paid for what's going out the shop door, not for what's going to happen 7 years from now. The two big sales I referred to, and which you have referred to, Saudi Arabia, F-15s, 72 of them. The first one of those F-15s won't be delivered for another 2 years. They'll be delivered till about the year 2000,
Okay, but you still have the orders on paper. Are you saying we're not the biggest supplier to the third world? Let me finish here, please.
I just want, can I add something
No,
to that?
Dallas, hang on 1 second. Joel, are you saying that?
What I'm saying was you had a one-time blip in a couple of large sales, which will be spread out in terms of production terms over about 5 to 6
Well,
years.
are you saying that sales are
you'll-
not booming to these countries?
They are marginally, in terms of what we are producing for export, they are marginally larger, maybe $1 billion compared to 5 years ago, compared to 10 years ago.
Let me run one other figure I read by you if you feel this is true or untrue. It says that next year will be the first time America sells more planes abroad than it does to American Army, Navy, Marines, our own defenses. It'll be the first time ever, and that the year after that, it will be 5-to-1 ratio. 5 times as many planes going abroad as the American defense system actually buys itself.
That's not because exports are going up, it's because domestic purchases have gone down so dramatically, and in particular because we're at a time where the older systems which we're selling overseas are not being purchased by the United States government any longer. New ones will not start being purchased by the U.S. government until around the turn of the century.
It still undermines the point I was making earlier, which is it buoys your industries at a time of declining U.S. purchases.
Absolutely, and it is important, particularly to certain production lines.
But
the only point I'm making
absolutely no time left, the last question was, aren't we just stalling the notion that we have to deal with peaceful conversion at some point in the absence of a Cold War? Obviously, this is another half an hour. I want to thank my guests, Dallas Jackson, Joel Johnson, Max Kampelman. We need more time, but that's it. We'll be right back.